My father was a mechanical engineer in his time, which is something that's sort of definitely command of science and math and physics. That's important to be a cinematographer. And my mother was, an amateur painter. So unbeknownst to me, I had this sort of proper background of science, math, and art. I bought this 8mm camera and for a couple of months shot films of my buddies skateboarding, just shooting a lot of what I thought were cool shots. Well, I put that away after a few months, and then I went to college at the University of Texas. And my grades were not all that good because of lack of interest. And really sort of figured out at the end of my first year that if I didn't get my shit together, I'd wind up in Vietnam. So I was sitting there at the end of the school year with a friend of mine in his apartment, flipping through the course book for next year, which was about the thickness of a small phone book, because there were 32,000 students at that time at the University of Texas. And going, no, looking at this, looking at that. And the very last thing in there was the Department of Radio, Television, and Film. So I said to my friend Ted, Ted, I think that there's a Department of Radio, Television, and Film, and I think this is a film school. And he goes, what's a film school? And I go, what can they teach you in film school? I'm going, I don't know, but I'm going. I've got to do something, so I'm going to film school. Well, I go into film school on day one, and it's fall of '68, and there's 20 of us in the class, and the teacher goes, look, there's very little chance of ever getting into this industry. This is a closed industry. It's really father to son. Outsiders do not get in. It's controlled by the unions. And if you're lucky, you'll get grants, you'll make films on the weekends and in the summers. Well, half the class got up and walked out at that point. I guess they wouldn't figure they couldn't sell that to their parents. I stuck it out. By the time I got my master's degree, I felt like, well, I'm pretty good at this. I think I'll break this. And I predicted to my friends, pretty bold statement, that I will shoot feature film by the time I'm 35. And I will break into this industry and I will shoot feature films by the time I'm 35. Well, about 3 weeks after that, phone rings. It's Tobe Hooper. Tobe Hooper, I'm doing a film here. I've been checking out all the cinematographers in the state of Texas, and he goes, I reckon you're the best, and I want to send you a screenplay. I hung up the phone, I was like electrified, People at my house go, what's going on? I go, I'm 12 years ahead of schedule. I've been offered a movie.
Oil storage units continue to burn out of control at the huge Texaco refinery near the Texas-Louisiana border. 3 storage units.
How could you? You'd be considered egomaniacal if you did say, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to the Museum of Modern Art. And 33 years later, people are still going to care about it and, be remade and all that. But still, at the same time, it was so strong on paper that I thought it would be something to have the great career and the fantastic life that I've been afforded, at filmmaking. I'm very proud to have made it. And even though it's not, I'm not that evil of a guy. I mean, I do shave my head because my hair fell out, but I don't have any tattoos, I don't have any earrings, I'm not pierced, But so I'm not that weird of a person. I actually don't even that often go to those kind of films. But evidently, I think history will show that I'm good at making those kind of films.
I started out as a teenager, really. I'd seen a movie, it literally drug me through the halls of insanity when I first saw it. A friend who saw the film at the time became physically ill. What an impression for us. So many years later, my wife and I moved from San Antonio to Austin. I had heard the film had been made here in Austin. Where was the house? It was urban legend. Was it real or not? Bunch of false leads. Finally got a map from a friend of mine, Michelle, at work, and she had a friend who was taking some other friends out to the house to party, and sure enough, I found it, but it must have been about 2 or 3 days after they had moved the house. I mean, I go out there, I didn't get to see it. The ground was still fresh from where the foundation was, but I got a few pictures and I put it on my website, small website. I got emails from around the world wanting more. They wanted to know where the house was, what happened to the gas station, the graveyard, and where's the cast now, and it just really snowballed from there since 1998. Well, here we are in a late 1800s house built from a kit in Round Rock, Texas. Obviously, this is the most important area of the house where his victims came in. Kirk was killed up here. Pam followed him in. Leatherface had his steel door just beyond here, which was put in for the movie. It wasn't an original part of the house. The house was actually made from a kit out of a Sears Roebuck catalog back in the late 1800s. The parts were actually pre-cut and drawn by horse and wagon from downtown Austin to Round Rock, where the house sat for about 100 years. It was built there. There's actually a couple of houses similar to it that were out there as well. They're gone. It changed owners over that period of time. It sat on Quick Hill, which is in Round Rock. People rented the house, and it was during that part of the 70s about where a family was renting the house. They allowed Tobe Hooper and company to come in. They moved to the right side of the house during filming. Well, here we are upstairs. This is where Sally first tries to get away from Leatherface. First business to open here was the Kingsland Old Town Grill. It was then that I started bringing cast members out here, such as Alan Danziger, who played Jerry from the film. Of course, Gunnar Hansen, who had not seen the house since he actually played his character for the film. I also brought out Paul Partain, Ed Neal. Then the Kingsland Old Town Grill moved out, and then we got the Four Bears restaurant that came and stayed here for a while. Wonderful food. They put on banquets. They also put on screenings out here once in a while. They'll bring a big film screen out here. Bunch of people come out with their ice chest and have a good old time out here. And there was even some cast members out here for the last screening of Chainsaw. Marilyn Burns, Gunnar Hansen, all of them came out and had a really wonderful time. Well, this is the bone room. We were first shown this room, and Hannah was trying to find her boyfriend, Kirk. She goes through a curtain that was here. She kicks a vase over and stumbles into a bunch of feathers, and she is introduced to how crazy this house is. Well, as far as locations, I have to say, of course, the house is probably the most fun. Whenever I come out here, it's usually because of a cast appearance. Because I get such a huge response from we have tons of memberships from around the world, really. We send out newsletters. People can purchase autographs and other types of merchandise. It's once again, it's a meeting for people who perhaps can't make the journey to Kingsland, to Texas, and see the sights. The fan club kind of brings us all together, and there's always fans out here who have been going to my website, and we get to meet, we get to talk shop, we get to talk chainsaw, get to shake hands, and really, the fans of the movie are just so wonderful. You would think that horror fans, they'd be gothic and weird and whatnot, but I definitely get to meet a lot of neat people from around the world. That's what I like the most. Saw's family.
Dude, you're it. You can go now. I got this one. You want to not do that? We just washed it.
Ya don't act, ya react.
I'm coming, Effie. I'm coming. Hey, I know what I'll do. Ow, that hurts.
You did all this?
Hutto.
Big time American director movie guy.
Home of the Hutto Hippos. You're welcome. No, you can charge ladies. I do my talking Finnish.
Cold water, Mary Sunshine, cold water.
These actors are such whiners. Thank you. Would you believe the stuff your lady's hawking me? No, it's not.
How to use your IBM copier 125. First, turn it on.
Cast this guy. Well, the deal with being schizophrenic is you don't get to choose. You know, you just like kind of hang out and go, hey, let's see who's gonna show up today. Sometimes it's rednecks, you know, from hell, and sometimes it's, you know, English gentlemen, and sometimes it's people from somewhere else, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, so you never know. You just kind of hang out and wait. You know, I was always a kid that was in class going, hi, Mrs. Feldman, you know, and I was making voices, and it's really kind of funny because now, dubbing lots of Japanese anime and voiceovers for commercials and stuff like that, whenever I get a big contract, I call my second grade teacher. And it's great fun. Hello, Mrs. Feldman. Hi, it's Eddie. I got another $30,000 job. Stop calling here. How'd you get this number? I've changed it 9 times. You know, every single year, there's a whole new audience for the film. And that's one of the reasons why it won't go away. Because there's a whole new audience for the film every year. It's the film that won't die.
Somebody said, what's the best thing? And what the best thing is how you get to meet people and stay friends with them for 30 years.
That's right.
My dad was a Baptist preacher, and obviously I didn't go that way. But we grew up in little towns. I grew up in Hereford, Texas, in the Panhandle, and then we moved to Portales, New Mexico, which at that time had a population of 13,000. And I remember my mother asked me one time when I was in junior high school if I'd ever thought about what I wanted to be, and I said, yeah, I want to be a doctor. And I guess that's all I'd ever thought about. And so this is what I set out to be. And from that point on, everything I did through high school and all and college was headed toward that. But I've always done artistic things, drawings and sculpture and wood carving and all that all my life. And when the movie came around, Marilyn was a friend, and she just mentioned to me one day that she was doing this movie, and they needed somebody to do special effects makeup. And I said, well, I can do that. I don't know if I could do it or not, except I figured, you know, I've been interested in this sort of thing. And so I bought some books on the subject and just started playing around with it. I made a lot of masks using dental alginate, and it's set up so rapidly that sometimes in order to get enough to cover a face, I'd have to have 2 or 3 people mixing up so we could get it on there before it's set up. And then I would cover it with strips of plaster, and I used plaster like you'd use for a cast. Well, the stuff deteriorated pretty rapidly, so you had to do something with it. And Bob Burns made all the masks. The ones that we were going to use for that purpose I gave to him, and then he did whatever he did for the masks. I actually had one had somebody make one of my face, I figured if I was going to put everybody through this, I would know what it felt like, because you had to have big pieces of straws in your nose with cotton packed around them and all that. So I guess one of the masks was probably made from my face. And I did when I finally created all this stuff, which took a while. I think I made him up 3 times, and it took 7.5 hours each time to apply the makeup. John was very nice. He didn't really have much to say. He was there, and I don't think he.
Take a horror break also. I'm horrored out right now. Even though I love it so much, I'm done with horror for at least a week or so.
Let's see which way this works. It wants to be this way, doesn't it? Does that look all right?
The whole room's gonna get smoky.
And they'll think this is a Ridley Scott film.
Yeah. Okay, so just look where you.
Pretend you're over there.
Yeah, pretend there.
Bob, you've just disappeared into that chair.
That's what the levels are getting.
Okay, I'm gonna talk like this. No, I'm not. All right. I'll stop being a jerk. I'll be talking about like this, because for some reason my frog is throating up. And you never want a throaty frog, believe me. I don't know what it means, but I don't like it.
I don't like it. All right.
Well, I was born in Iceland, and then when I was 5, my family moved to America. And I went back in the summers, but grew up here in America. Actually grew up in Maine. Well, I lived in Maine until I was about 11, and then we moved to Texas. So I should say I grew up in Texas, went to high school and college in Texas, but always wanted to come back here. I was studying literature. I studied English as an undergraduate, and then in college, in graduate school, I was a Scandinavian Studies major. So my intention was to go off and write books. And that, even when he did Chainsaw, that was my plan, because what I really was expecting to do was do this movie as a kind of experiment. I mean, it was something new for me. That's the one car in town, by the way.
That's it.
Every Sunday night, about this hour, he comes by. So what do I do now?
Well, just
act natural.
Yeah, act natural. Okay, maybe not that natural.
Well, my real passion was always writing. It's always what I wanted to do. So I, always had that intention of just being a writer, whatever that meant. Writing books, writing magazine articles. And that's why when Chainsaw came out, I just left Texas. I was living in Texas at the time. I was out of graduate school when we did Chainsaw, but then I went back for one more year of graduate school, and at that point moved to Maine, because now I was ready. I was interested in working as a writer, so I came up here because I loved being in Maine and because I felt I could live less expensively here. I really liked the fact that it was a small town and it had that small community sense where you know everybody and you say hi to everybody in the street. But also I like the climate. I like being on the ocean, and I like the fact that there's a real winter here and it gets cold and quiet and dark, and beautiful long, summers with long days. And a little village where no one ever is on Main Street in the winter. See, the first winter here I wrote a really bad novel, but at least I wrote something, And in fact, I was so committed to that about a year after I moved here, Bob Burns, who was the art director on Chainsaw, Bob called me and said, I'm in LA, I'm making movies. I'm with this new guy, nobody's heard of him, Wes Craven. And he's doing a movie called The Hills Have Eyes. there's a part for you as one of the killers. Can you be here in 2 weeks? And I said, no, I'm not doing movies anymore. You know, I'm a writer, whatever that meant. And so, very stupidly, I turned it down. And my reasoning on it was, there were a couple of things. One is, I'd met a few film producers, and I wasn't very impressed with the film business. My feeling was that so many of the people I met were just really slimeballs, and I didn't want anything to do with them. But another thing was, I had made this decision, which was, I would do anything to write. And if it meant riding on the garbage truck to pay the bills, okay. And I did that. If it meant being a waiter or a bartender, you know, whatever it took for me to do, I mean, I shouldn't say it that way, but I mean, I was willing to do whatever I needed to do to be able to have the chance to write. I haven't eaten in a week. I haven't eaten in a week. They don't feed you in this little village. So pretty quickly after I moved here, I was writing. And within a year of moving here, I was making my living writing. And that's pretty much the way it went. I mean, this film, Demon Lover in Michigan. And so Fred said, you know, I'm in LA making movies. Why don't you come out? And I started to say no. And then I thought, well, this is really silly. Why am I saying no? He's, you know, it's a trip to LA. So I actually said yes. And I flew out to LA and, you know, did my participation in Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. And after I had done the film with Fred, I started getting asked to do other films. But the other thing that came along was I was asked to write a film script. So I wrote a script for a small budget horror film, and I loved doing it. It was like writing a novel again. You know, it was like going back to fiction, which is what I'd always wanted to do. So at that point, I started really pushing also to write screenplays, and that's primarily what I've done. I haven't had a single one produced. I've had 2 optioned. I've sold 2. You know, I've actually spent quite a bit of time the last few years writing and producing documentary films. So I just recently finished a documentary film. The client was the Passamaquoddy tribe of eastern Maine, and it's about their relationship to the St. Croix River watershed. So I have continued to be able to write scripts for documentaries and you know, produce them. What a big movie Chainsaw had been. I mean, I understood in the sense that the film was very controversial. There was a front page story in the Philadelphia Inquirer about how people were throwing up in the theater and leaving, demanding their money back. I knew that Rex Reed had said this was the most scariest movie he'd ever seen. So I knew that it was having an effect and that people paid attention to it. But I had no idea that Chainsaw had become part of the culture. So I was very surprised to discover how intense this was for people. The one event that really probably was the single thing that made me understand was I was watching an episode of Cheers, and Kirstie Alley is in the show, and she's been invited to spend the weekend house sitting in a state out in the country. So at the end, you know, the last act, she's out there and it's starting to get dark and she gets scared. And so she runs around the house, locking the doors, closing windows and locking them because she's now afraid. And she sits down in the living room. This is right at the end of the show. She sits down in the living room, and she hears a noise and she says, "Oh, Leatherface, I hope that's not you." And that's when the light went off. I thought, wait a minute, this film must be huge to people. I mean, this must be part of the culture. If Kirstie Alley on a mainstream TV show can make a reference to Leatherface without no explanation, that means that people know who Leatherface is. And it was really the late 80s before I understood how much Chainsaw Massacre had become a part of the culture. And I'm glad I didn't know that, because I was busy doing what I wanted to be doing. And I wasn't participating in the film scene. I wasn't trying to take advantage of any of that. I just wanted to write. And by having moved to, you know, an island in Maine, it allowed me to do that without really being affected by what happened with the movie. But I still didn't imagine.